All right, settle in, folks, because I've got a story for you. My name is Stella, and I'm 28 years old. My life, until recently, was about as exciting as watching paint dry, filled with the mundane routines of a struggling graphic designer. That is, until he walked back into it. The man who, a year ago, threw me out of his office with less ceremony than a spilled coffee. Now he's revealing a past that links us in ways I never imagined. A past shrouded in secrets and an undeniable fortune. This isn't just a story about love or money or even revenge. It's about how the very person who tried to erase me from his life became the one to uncover a truth that changed everything. So lean in close because you won't believe how this all unfolded. If you're ready for a wild ride, hit that subscribe button and let's dive in. My name is Stella, and I'm 28 years old. For most of my life, I've been content living in the quiet hum of anonymity, blending into the backdrop of a bustling city. My days were a predictable cycle of design projects. Logos for small businesses, flyers for local events, and the occasional coffee shop rendezvous with my best friend, Chloe. I lived in a cozy, slightly cluttered apartment, my walls adorned with design mood boards and a growing collection of houseplants. Financially, I was always just getting by, enough to cover rent and the occasional splurge on art supplies, but far from anything I'd call comfortable. My biggest ambition was simply to create something beautiful, something that resonated. Then, exactly 1 year ago, my quiet world was ripped apart by a whirlwind named Alexander Sterling. He was the CEO of Sterling Innovations, a tech empire, and a man whose presence filled every room he entered, radiating an aura of power and undeniable arrogance. I'd interned at his company briefly, a desperate attempt to gain experience in a cutthroat industry. And that's where the defining moment of my life, my personal earthquake, occurred. He fired me. Not just fired me, but dismissed me with a cold, dismissive wave of his hand, as if I were less than inconsequential, a mere fly to be swat from his perfectly tailored suit. "You're not cut out for this, Ms. Rossi," he'd said, his eyes devoid of emotion. "You lack the edge." Those words, delivered with such casual cruelty, shattered something inside me. They ignited a fire of resentment, a burning desire to prove him wrong. I vowed that day I would never be dismissed again. I swore I'd never allow myself to be vulnerable to anyone like him. Little did I know, his dismissal was merely the opening act in a much larger, more dramatic play. A play where his secret fortune would unexpectedly unite us, revealing a past I could never have foreseen. The sting of Alexander Sterling's words lingered, a bitter aftertaste in my mouth for months. "You lack the edge." They echoed in the quiet of my apartment, in the late-night hours spent hunched over my laptop, trying to make ends meet with freelance design gigs. I poured all my frustrated energy into my work, determined to prove him, and frankly myself, wrong. I took on every small project I could find, designing wedding invitations, crafting social media graphics for local bakeries, anything to build my portfolio and my confidence. It was slow going, a constant uphill battle against self-doubt and financial anxiety. My apartment, once a haven of creative chaos, started to feel like a cage. Chloe, my fiercely loyal best friend, was my rock during this time. She'd listen patiently to my rants about Alexander, offering a steady supply of chocolate and unwavering encouragement. "He's just a jerk, Stella," she'd say. "You're brilliant." His loss. Her words were a balm, but they didn't quite erase the memory of his icy gaze. One particularly grueling evening, after pulling an all-nighter to finish a rush job, I received an email that made my heart leap into my throat. It was from Sterling Innovations. My first thought was that it was some kind of generic marketing email, an accidental remnant from my short-lived internship. But then I saw the subject line: "Urgent design proposal, Ms. Stella Rossi." Urgent? From them? My mind raced, churning with a mixture of confusion and a familiar knot of apprehension. Could this be some kind of cruel joke? Or a test? Despite the lingering bitterness, a flicker of curiosity ignited within me. The email, written in a surprisingly formal yet almost pleading tone, requested my immediate attention for a highly confidential project. It mentioned a unique aesthetic they had observed in my past work, a stark contrast to Alexander's earlier assessment. The attached brief was vague, hinting at a project of immense scale and secrecy, but it did specify one thing. The client was Mr. Alexander Sterling himself. My blood ran cold. The man who'd cast me aside was now seeking my unique aesthetic. It felt like a trap, a twisted game. Yet, beneath the apprehension, a defiant spark ignited. This was my chance. My chance to show myself, that I had more than enough edge. The email from Sterling Innovations felt like a whisper of destiny, a subtle pull that promised something more, something beyond the familiar confines of my struggling existence. It was a chance to confront the ghost of my past, to walk back into the lion's den with my head held high. The following morning, I found myself standing outside the towering glass facade of Sterling Innovations, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The same building, the same imposing lobby, yet this time, a strange sense of purpose propelled me forward. I clutched my portfolio, my fingers tracing the worn edges of the leather. The receptionist, a stern-faced woman who remembered me from my internship, raised an eyebrow, a hint of surprise in her usually impassive gaze. "Ms. Rossi," she acknowledged, "Mr. Sterling is expecting you." The elevator ride-up felt interminable, each floor ticking by like a countdown. When the doors finally chimed open, I stepped out into a sleek, minimalist corridor. My footsteps echoed in the silence until I reached the familiar, imposing oak door of Alexander Sterling's office. Taking a deep breath, I knocked. "Come in," a voice as deep and resonant as I remembered called from inside. I pushed the door open, my gaze immediately falling upon him. He was seated at his large, polished desk, bathed in the soft glow of the city skyline through the panoramic window. He looked exactly as I remembered, impeccable suit, piercing blue eyes, and an air of quiet authority. He gestured to the chair opposite him, a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Ms. Rossi, thank you for coming." His voice held no trace of the dismissive tone I remembered, only a cool professionalism. I sat, my posture stiff, my portfolio resting on my lap like a shield. He began to explain the project. It was a highly sensitive undertaking, a global philanthropic initiative aimed at providing technological education to underprivileged communities worldwide. The sheer scale of it was breathtaking, almost overwhelming. He needed a designer who could encapsulate the essence of hope, connection, and innovation in the project's branding, its visual identity. He spoke of its potential impact, his words carrying an unexpected passion. I listened intently, a mix of skepticism and intrigue churning within me. This didn't sound like the cold, calculating CEO I remembered. This sounded like a visionary. He then laid out the design brief, detailing the specific requirements, the tight deadlines, and the immense pressure involved. The scope was far beyond anything I had ever tackled, a daunting challenge that would demand every ounce of my creativity and resilience. As he spoke, I found myself drawn in, not just by the magnitude of the project, but by the subtle shifts in his demeanor. He seemed different, more engaged, less detached. He even acknowledged my past work, the small, seemingly insignificant freelance projects, stating that he'd been impressed by my unique ability to convey emotion through simplicity. It was an unexpected compliment, one that sent a jolt through me. The sting of his past dismissal began to dull, replaced by a cautious optimism. This wasn't just about proving him wrong anymore. This was about proving myself right. This was about a project that could truly make a difference, a project I suddenly, desperately, wanted to be a part of. The air between us, once thick with unspoken resentment, now crackled with a nascent possibility, a shared understanding of the profound importance of the task at hand. As I walked out of his office, the weight of the portfolio felt lighter, replaced by the exhilarating prospect of a future I hadn't dared to imagine. The initial trepidation had transformed into a thrilling anticipation, a sense that the universe was subtly nudging me toward a path I never knew existed, a path where old wounds might finally begin to heal. The project consumed me. Days bled into nights, my apartment transforming into a war room of sketches, mood boards, and endless cups of coffee. I poured my heart and soul into every design, determined to exceed not only Alexander's expectations but my own. Surprisingly, our interactions became more frequent, more collaborative. He wasn't the distant, unapproachable CEO I remembered. He was demanding, yes, but also surprisingly insightful, offering feedback that was both precise and genuinely helpful. We spent hours in his office, poring over designs, discussing color palettes, and debating font choices. During these sessions, I began to see glimpses of the man beneath the impenetrable CEO facade. He would occasionally tell a brief anecdote about a childhood dream, or offer a fleeting, almost imperceptible smile when a design truly resonated with him. These small moments chipped away at my preconceived notions, revealing layers I hadn't expected. One particularly late night, after a marathon design session, we were the last two people in the office. The city lights twinkled outside the window, casting long shadows across his elegant office. He looked tired, his usual sharp edges softened by exhaustion. He leaned back in his chair, a sigh escaping his lips. "You know, Stella," he began, his voice surprisingly quiet. "This project, it means a lot to me. More than you can imagine." He paused, as if gathering his thoughts. "My family, they weren't always wealthy. My father, he built this company from nothing, but before that, we knew what it was like to struggle. To not have access to basic things like a proper education." My eyes widened. This was a revelation. The Sterling Empire, in my mind, had always been synonymous with old money, with inherited privilege. This admission, so raw and unexpected, shattered another one of my long-held assumptions. He continued, his gaze fixed on the twinkling city lights. "I remember my father working 3 jobs just to put food on the table. He always instilled in me the importance of giving back, of using whatever success you achieve to lift others up." He turned to look at me, his eyes now holding a vulnerability I'd never seen before. "When I dismissed you last year, it wasn't personal, Stella. I was under immense pressure, dealing with a lot of internal family issues, trying to keep this company afloat amidst some very difficult financial decisions. I saw in you a certain sensitivity, a quiet strength, that I mistakenly interpreted as a lack of drive. I was wrong, terribly wrong." The confession hung in the air, heavy with unspoken regret. My heart, which had been encased in a protective shell for so long, began to crack open. His words were a balm, soothing the old wounds I thought would never heal. The man who had once been my nemesis was now revealing a deeply personal history, a vulnerability that bridged the chasm between us. It was a moment of profound connection, a shared humanity that transcended our past grievances. In that quiet office, bathed in the glow of the city, the lines between client and designer blurred, replaced by something far more complex, far more meaningful. A profound shift had occurred, a realization that the initial dismissal was not an ending, but merely a convoluted beginning, leading us both down an unforeseen path of understanding and connection. From that night on, the dynamic between Alexander and me irrevocably changed. The professional barriers began to crumble, replaced by a tentative friendship, built on late-night conversations and shared cups of coffee. We'd often find ourselves discussing more than just design, delving into our lives, our dreams, our fears. He spoke of the immense pressure of running Sterling Innovations, the weight of his father's legacy, and the constant battle to maintain the company's competitive edge. He revealed the hidden struggles within his family, the complicated relationships that came with immense wealth and power. I, in turn, shared my own journey. The challenges of building a freelance career from scratch, the struggles of financial independence, and the anxieties that came with pursuing my artistic passions in a world that often prioritizes profit over creativity. It was during one of these candid conversations, as we were finalizing the last touches on the project's website, that he brought up his family again. He was describing a particularly difficult period during his adolescence, a time when his family's fortunes had taken a significant downturn. "My father," he began, his voice tinged with a familiar sadness, "he had to make some incredibly tough choices to keep us afloat. He even had to sell off some of his less visible assets. Things that meant a great deal to him." He paused, his gaze distant. "One of them was an old, dilapidated property on the outskirts of town. It wasn't much to look at, just an abandoned house with an overgrown garden, but it held a lot of sentimental value for him. He used to say it was where he first dreamed of building something grand." A chill ran down my spine. An old, dilapidated property on the outskirts of town? An abandoned house with an overgrown garden? The description hit me like a jolt. It sounded eerily similar to the house my grandmother had inherited, a property she had always talked about selling but never quite got around to. A house she had always vaguely referred to as the old Rossi place. My grandmother, bless her heart, had been a hoarder of stories, and one she often told was of a wealthy family, the Sterlings, who had once owned the land around their old house. She'd always hint at some long-forgotten connection, a shared past, but I'd always dismissed it as nostalgic ramblings. "What was the name of the family who owned it before your father sold it?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, a strange mix of dread and anticipation swirling within me. Alexander looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Rossi," he said simply. "The Rossi family. Why do you ask?" My breath hitched. It couldn't be a coincidence. The pieces of a forgotten puzzle began to click into place, forming a picture I never could have imagined. The old Rossi place, the Sterling family, the shared history my grandmother had alluded to. It was too much to process, too intertwined to be mere chance. His secret fortune, born from his family's struggles, was now inextricably linked to my own family's forgotten past. The revelation hung between us, a powerful, unspoken truth that shifted the ground beneath our feet. The veil between our separate worlds had thinned, revealing not just a shared history, but a profound and unexpected connection that deepened with every unfolding detail. The revelation of our family's intertwined past left us both speechless, a weighty silence settling between us in the suddenly too small office. My mind reeled, trying to reconcile the image of Alexander, the formidable CEO, with the boy whose family had once owned my grandmother's dilapidated house. It was a bizarre, almost unbelievable twist of fate. Alexander, equally stunned, stared at me, his usual composure momentarily shattered. "Rossi," he repeated, as if tasting the name. Are you related to that family?" I nodded, my voice thick with emotion. "My grandmother was a Rossi. The house, it's been in our family for generations, though it's been vacant for years." He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me, lost in thought. When he turned back, his expression was a mix of awe and a strange sort of grief. My father, he never spoke much about that property after he sold it. It was a sore spot for him, a symbol of a difficult time. But he always mentioned a specific painting, a landscape, that was supposedly left behind when his family had to leave it in a hurry. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. Do you know anything about a painting?" My heart leaped. A painting? My grandmother, in her final years, had often spoken of a hidden treasure in the old house, something she said was worth more than gold. I'd always assumed it was a metaphor, a figment of her fading memory. But now it seemed plausible. My grandmother always talked about something hidden in the house. I admitted. She called it a treasure, but she was never specific. The air crackled with a new kind of energy, a shared sense of intrigue. This wasn't just about our families anymore, it was about a tangible link, a piece of history waiting to be uncovered. We made a pact then and there. We would go to the old Rossi place together. It was a strange pilgrimage, two people from seemingly disparate worlds, united by a newly discovered past and the tantalizing possibility of a hidden legacy. The drive to the old house was filled with a nervous anticipation. As we approached the overgrown property, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. The house stood weathered and forgotten, but I could almost hear the echoes of my grandmother's stories, the laughter of children long gone. This place, once a symbol of my family's quiet decline, was now on the cusp of revealing a secret that could bind us to the sterling legacy in ways neither of us could have ever predicted. The old house, once just a crumbling relic, now held the promise of an untold story, a silent witness to the intertwining threads of our family's fortunes. Each step into the forgotten corners of the old house felt like a whisper from the past, drawing us deeper into a mystery that promised to unravel not only secrets, but also the very foundations of our understanding. The old Rossi place was even more dilapidated than I remembered, its windows boarded up, its porch sagging. Yet, as we pushed open the creaking front door, a strange sense of reverence filled the dusty air. Alexander, usually so composed, moved with a newfound urgency, his eyes scanning every nook and cranny. The house was a time capsule of forgotten lives, filled with cobwebs and the faint scent of mildew. We moved from room to room, a sense of shared purpose guiding us. I pointed out the old fireplace where my grandmother used to tell her stories, the worn wooden steps leading to the second floor, each corner holding a memory, a fragment of my family's history. Alexander, meanwhile, was meticulously examining the walls, tapping on panels, searching for any hidden compartments his father might have alluded to. Suddenly, in what used to be the master bedroom, Alexander stopped. He was examining a section of the wall behind a built-in bookshelf. "Stella, come look at this," he said, his voice low with excitement. I rushed over. He pointed to a faint outline, almost imperceptible, where a section of the wall seemed to be slightly recessed. With a gentle push, a small, hidden compartment swung open, revealing a dusty, velvet-lined cavity. Inside, nestled amongst old documents and yellowed photographs, was a painting. It was a landscape, a vibrant depiction of a sprawling vineyard under a warm, golden sunset. The colors were rich, the brushstrokes confident, and despite the dust, its beauty was undeniable. Alexander carefully lifted it out, his fingers tracing the edges of the frame. "This is it," he whispered, a tremor in his voice. "This is the painting my father spoke about." He turned it over, and there on the back was a faded inscription. "To my dearest Elias, a testament to our dreams. A. Rossi." Elias, Alexander's great-grandfather, and A. Rossi, my great-grandmother. The connection was undeniable, breathtaking. But it wasn't just a painting. Beneath it, in the same hidden compartment, was a leather-bound journal. Alexander opened it carefully, his eyes scanning the faded script. "It's my great-grandfather's journal," he said, his voice filled with awe. He wrote about his business ventures, his investments, and a significant portion of his hidden fortune, tied to early investments in what would become some of the most prominent tech companies of their time. Investments he made in partnership with your great-grandmother, apparently. The journal detailed a joint venture between our ancestors, a secret partnership that had laid the foundation for the Sterling family's wealth, and a portion of which, according to the journal, was meant to be shared with the Rossi family, a legacy forgotten over generations. The secret fortune wasn't just Alexander's. It was a shared inheritance, a legacy buried by time and circumstance, now brought to light. We stood there, side by side, two descendants of a long-forgotten alliance, the painting and the journal in our hands, the weight of history and newfound understanding settling upon us. The old house, once a symbol of neglect, now stood as a silent witness to a truth that would forever bind our lives. The revelation in the old house wasn't just about unlocking a family secret. It was about unlocking a future, a path intertwined with an undeniable bond that would redefine both our destinies. In the quiet dust of the old Rossi place, surrounded by the echoes of a forgotten past, Alexander and I found more than just a painting and a journal. We found a shared history, a secret fortune that intertwined our families in a way neither of us could have ever imagined. The man who had once dismissed me so coldly, the CEO who embodied everything I thought I resented, had become the catalyst for unearthing a truth that transformed my entire world. Today, Alexander and I are partners, not just in business but in life. We're working together to honor our ancestors' legacy, to ensure that the wealth accumulated through their ingenuity is used for good. The philanthropic initiative we started working on, the one that brought us back together, has grown exponentially, fueled by the rediscovery of this shared fortune and our combined vision. We've established foundations in both our families' names, dedicated to supporting education and innovation in underprivileged communities worldwide. The most profound lesson I've learned from this unexpected journey is that appearances can be deceiving, and first impressions can be terribly wrong. Alexander wasn't just a ruthless CEO. He was a man burdened by legacy, trying to navigate complex family dynamics, just as I was trying to forge my own path. His past dismissal, though painful at the time, ultimately led us to this incredible discovery, to a connection that transcended anything I could have dreamed of. It taught me the importance of empathy, of looking beyond the surface, and of recognizing that everyone carries their own unseen struggles. This story, my story, is a testament to the unforeseen paths life can take, and how even the most painful endings can lead to the most extraordinary beginnings. It's a reminder that sometimes, the very person who throws you out can be the one who ultimately brings you home, revealing a past that unites you in ways you never thought possible. So, what hidden connections might be waiting to be discovered in your own life? What old assumptions are you holding on to that might be holding you back from a surprising truth? Keep your heart open, because you never know where your own secret fortune might be waiting to unite you. Remember, even when the path seems unclear, there's always a hidden story waiting to be told, and sometimes, the most unexpected encounters lead to the most profound transformations.